Dipti's joining us here on set now with the papers. She's, of course, talking about Ukraine, that escalating situation. Of course, it's dominating the papers, isn't it, Dipti?
It is, and there's really one word that sort of jumps out from a lot of the front pages today, Stuart, and that word is war. It's on the front page of the French paper Libération today, accompanied with a rather ominous picture, a very dark picture of a tank. Ukraine faces war, Libération says, as the West is trying to find an appropriate response to Russian President Vladimir Putin's provocation. The paper actually wondering, is he crazy to be doing all of this today? You see the same language from the Belgian paper Le Soir as well, ready for war, it says on its front page, wondering what comes next. Are we looking at fighting with Ukraine's army? Are we looking at thousands of deaths, or are we looking at more of a war that takes place, sort of modern warfare with cyber attacks and hybrid operations that attack infrastructure rather than populations? It's very unclear what kind of war this shape, what kind of shape this war will take. In any case, Vladimir Putin has crossed the red line, and it's clear that he's the one who is, quote, leading the dance in Ukraine.
You found quite a lot of belligerent language, haven't you, particularly in the British press?
In fact, almost across every single major British paper today, it's all about Ukraine. Look at this sort of collection of front pages here. You've got get dirty Russian money out of UK now. Twisted Putin is ready for bloodshed. War threat grows. That's from The Guardian. Punish Putin harder now. The Daily Express says, the anti-Russian rhetoric is truly well and alive in the British press today. Metro there, you might see there, it provides us with a little comedic timing. We'll grab him by the roubles, they say. Indeed, that is what the West is trying to do with some punishing economic sanctions announced against Moscow.
Well, the US President Joe Biden, of course, announced new sanctions against Russia. The Washington Post is quite approving of his decision.
Well, they call it, in this article here, they call it a calibrated response to a threatened cataclysm in Ukraine. They say this first tranche of sanctions are not yet the severe and crippling sanctions that Joe Biden has promised, but no one, the paper says, should be under any illusions that such stiff punishments can be avoided if Russia's assembled armor and troops move further and further into Ukraine.
Russian papers, what are they saying today?
Well, the pro-Kremlin paper Izvestia is defiant that these sanctions will have very little effect on the Russian economy. In fact, they say it won't really be a threat at all. You have the Russian website Svobodnaya Pressa, which even goes as far as mocking Joe Biden, calling him a, quote, old U.S. president who, like his allies, dreams of a NATO intervention, but do not actually want to fight for Kiev.
Dipti's found a very interesting article. This is from a Russian publication known for being very critical of the Kremlin.
In fact, that's the Novaya Gazeta, Stuart. In fact, their editor-in-chief received a Nobel Peace Prize last year for his and the publication's courageous efforts to continue reporting despite threats, despite violence and murder against them. The paper today in this article is very interesting. They warn that Vladimir Putin will only stop when he has completed a, quote, dismemberment of Ukraine. The recognition of the separatists is just a step, the publication says. It's not the ultimate goal. The goal is really to redefine the post-Soviet world order, a world order that is based on a prosperous economy, on advanced technology and science. And the author argues that it's not just in Putin's interest to redefine this order, it's also in the interest of other autocratic leaders like China's Xi Jinping and Turkey's Recep Tayyip Erdogan, who will, quote, gladly take advantage of the collapse to build their own empires from the rubble.
And speaking of China, Dipti's also found reactions from the government-run paper, the Global Times.
It's really interesting, this article, because when you read it, you'd think that they were giving some sort of marriage counseling or something like that. Like a couple heading for a separation, Russia and Ukraine, they need space to resolve their issues. That's what the Global Times editors say, the Global Times being a paper run by the Chinese government. Rather than seeing it as a Russian provocation, the Global Times says whether the situation will further escalate depends on the scale of the U.S. sanctions and whether Russia will be sort of provoked into taking more aggressive measures.
Finally, Dipty's going to have a look through the illustrated press for us.
Well, you've got the Washington Post's Michael Diato. He's not very convinced by Joe Biden's sanctions, Stuart. Here you see him blowing peas at a much more powerful and determined Vladimir Putin. Yeah. Indeed, the situation in Ukraine is providing great fodder for the world's illustrators. Libération's Coco sees an increasingly war-thirsty Putin turning into a tank himself. That's really well done.
It's clever.
Finally, Patrick Blower, the Daily Telegraph's illustrator, he's got this image of a shirtless Putin, which we're seeing in a lot of the cartoons. He's not on horseback, but he's aboard his tank, crushing through, I guess, what could be the streets of Ukraine. Obviously, there's a very phallic sort of interpretation of his tank and the smoke coming out of it, and egomaniacal dictators and their tanks and war and all that entails.
At least there's, if not an amusing, sort of a sarcastic way of looking at it in the cartoons. Thanks very much, Diptyque Laurent, with the papers for us on France 24.